Okay, hello, fellow learners. This is Juan Jose Gutierrez. I am recording the second module of the third unit of our course. I'm recording from a hotel in Kansas, in a place that is called Manhattan. And so I apologize for any environmental music and noise that you might hear. I'm attending a conference, and the good news is that I could step out of some of the sessions so that I can record this introduction to the module. Mostly, we're going to continue exploring the different spaces, real spaces that are there as part of the deep web. As I mentioned in the last session, you have on the one hand a large area of data that is actually quite boring, that is mostly databases that are out of use. Think, for example, as I think I mentioned for the last module, think, for example, on all those records for students that came to the university, let's say, before 2000. Those records have just liminal interest, really. So there's not much dark in those sets of data. Bank accounts, tax records, all kinds of information that really do not have an active value. And that's the vast majority of what the deep web is. But then there's other areas of the deep web where we have explored and know as the dark web, which is spaces where some transactions and some interaction that is sometimes illicit, sometimes immoral, sometimes inappropriate takes place, and sometimes quite dangerous, and sometimes inciting to violence and a number of things. That is the area that it's the dark web. In between the deep web and the dark web, there's a space where I think you're going to find what the book calls net pornography will be lying at. And so I would like for us to continue exploring this aspect of the deep dark web, and I think this is particularly. I want to again contextualize where we're exploring this. I think it's important that we approach this with perspective. Part of what happens in the realm of pornography in the network is it belongs to a questionable but immensely growing industry. It's probably one of the aspects of the internet that has most creativity and vibrancy. And as such, and from an anthropological standpoint, we are obliged, we have the obligation to explore and to understand. If you ask me as a person, I think I rather understand what's going on there. Think, for example, if you are an educator or a parent, and you know that whether you like it or not, everyone is exposed to this information because it's so easily accessible. And one thing that we can do is we can block that and then make a decision for our kids and for our students that they shouldn't see certain things. But on the other hand, I think it is important that each individual, each person, based on their cultural and moral parameters, understands what decisions are appropriate for his or her particular perspective. And so this will give us a chance to understand what's going on there and what are the implications of what's going on there. In the realm of net pornography, you're going to find would even say healthy behaviors that people normally engage in, exploring your sexuality, even experiencing your sexuality. That is not abnormal behavior. Every human being engages in this in different ways. So whenever I see that, I think that is a space that for moral or cultural reasons we would like to be seen in the open. But on the other hand, this is pretty healthy, and there's a rainbow of positions, moral and cultural positions on this. And I'm not dictating here what should be your position, but I definitely want to say that some aspects of what happens on the internet in terms of pornography are just part of our natural way of expressing and searching for and in experiencing sexuality. But it is also important to acknowledge that those drives and desires and explorations that every human engages in sexuality can also be used and abused by individuals with commercial or otherwise interests that are important to also consider and study and explore. And then you can, as a scientist, your job is to bring understanding as to what's going on there, and that's the nature of the book that we're reading. As individuals, you can take your own cultural and moral stances, but once you know it, and I think it's important to give you the chance as a mature adult to continue exploring and knowing in a more deeper way what's going on there. Some of the behavior that is represented on the internet falls well beyond the normative spaces that culture has defined as acceptable, and there are even elements there that are of pathological nature, and those need deserve attention because of its potential implications when disinformation incites or generates misunderstandings in individuals that are vulnerable and that are watching and approaching these places. So in that sense, I'm actually quite glad that this module and this course is challenging you to have a better understanding of this aspect of the internet. And not that you don't have one solid, but it is nice to have a conversation with people that have embraced the study of this area from a professional social scientific perspective, such as the case of the author of our textbook. Perhaps the aspect that I'm mostly concerned with is when the elements that are out there in the porn universe will generate or will be the result of relationships of power that are abusive and asymmetrical. And when you see child pornography, when you see individuals that are selling images and behaviors because there's no alternative, well, that really that results from a power relationship that is absolutely, and I say absolutely, interculturally questionable, because there are basic human rights that are definitely violated when you see these elements. And that, it is my opinion, that is something that should be just not accepted as part of our normal sexual behaviors, just as there's many of the things that you see on the internet that are part of normal sexual behaviors. And then I'm also really not too happy with the commercial use and abuse of images and whatnot, because I think these websites actually take advantage of natural important drives and desires that people have, and in a way that I don't think we're completely free to opt out or to understand how and to what extent we're being manipulated by folks that are making quite a buck based on this. So that's what the different chapters of the book are exploring, and again, don't read the book as if it was the center of orthodoxy or the type of thinking that we must have or that you must have. But I really want you to read that book and explore these elements as an opportunity to process your understandings and your positions on all different aspects of the digital. And again, I think most of the hesitation that you hear in my voice has to do with the fact that this is a realm that has multi-faceted aspects and nature, and it needs to be explored with care and understanding all the different implications of what's going on there. For this module, I'm not gonna be recording a lecture, partly because of the fact that I'm not in my office and with all the elements at hand, that's I would lie to you, that was not a factor. But on the other hand, I think this is the moment in which we need to step on the gas in terms of writing those final essays. I started my presentation, I believe, indicating that you might be wondering, how do I make the grade on this course? That's been, I know, a little complicated for many of you to navigate. And you have to remember, you have to have from 8 to 10 annotations at the end of the semester. You have to write your final essay, and then you have to show that you've been somewhat committed to following through the different units, which I will take as your attendance to the class. I'm going to start calling each of you individually for meetings during the next 2 weeks, so that I can see where you are and I can make sure that you are following up on what the course is requiring from you. Other than that, I think that's what frames this module, and I wish you much success. And I will remind you that I hold office hours this Wednesday, the 26th, in my office in Seaside at the university from 10 to 12, and then from 2 to 4. Please let me know if you want to meet with me either online or if you want to meet face to face. I will be very happy to chat with you and see how things are going. All right, so have fun with the readings. Keep on reading the book. You're gonna find posted on the website, and then sent to you in the form of an email, the corresponding instructions for annotations 5 through 8, which corresponds to the current second unit that we're exploring, third unit that we're exploring. All right, have a good one.